We want to simplify their environment. Less is better. It's really, really important. So less in the classroom, less at the room at home, understanding, helping families understand that less in their room. I always recommend to families enough clothes for 3 days in the room, a bed, a desk, a chair, one picture on the wall. If they're a younger child, 2 or 3 things to play with, never more than 3. If they're an adolescent, then maybe 2 or 3 things to use, and no more than 3. And everything else is put away as a support, not as a punishment. So even in school, having all of their books and their thing, and needing to get from one place to another, it's overwhelming. Less is really better, and it helps them feel more organized. They are always getting into trouble because their area is a mess, because they just can't get it together and clean it themselves. And cleaning is abstract, because that doesn't mean anything. As much as routines can be simplified, the more the better. I know in school that's really hard, but if every day there's a different schedule, that they don't know what to do when, and that increases anxiety and stress and increases release of cortisol. At home, I always tell families, same bedtime every day. I don't care if it's a weekday, weekend, vacation, holiday, same bedtime every day, same meal times every day as much as possible. We want to get it into long-term memory so they know what to expect, then it gets comfortable and they know what to expect. And anytime there's going to be a change, you remind them and prepare them early and often. Because change and transition, even if it's a positive change, increases stress and anxiety. If they have a cell phone or an iPod or something, reminders for getting to their appointments, what they need to do, taking their medications is really, really useful. If you're working with the family and you're scheduling an appointment, let's talk with the family about programming into their cell phone, not when the appointment time is. That would be what we would tend to do. Program in the appointment time. No, because then they'll leave at their appointment time. Program in when they have to leave for their appointment. And then set reminders. Can be really, really useful. So people, and that's where we see, are people really oppositional, or do they have this, they don't have this concept of time. Oh, my appointment's 2 o'clock, it takes me an hour to get there, I better leave at 1. 2 o'clock. My appointment's at 2 o'clock, I leave at 2 o'clock. And they don't understand why you won't see them, because they're late. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of repetition, as I said. Much more than you would think based on their intellectual abilities. And think about, it's got to get past damaged working memory into long-term memory. That's why we're doing this repetition over, not because they're not paying attention. Again, visuals are really useful in terms of what you want their desk to look like. Can be really helpful. Lists are really useful. Check-off lists are really useful. I always tell families, don't say to your child, go clean your room, because that's an abstract concept, because they'll go to the room and they'll move one thing over there, and they'll argue that their area is clean. And you'll say, look at this area. You can say to a child in school, look at your desk, it's a mess, and they'll look and say, where? And they don't even see it. So clean your area, clean your desk, clean your room is abstract unless you've broken it down to what are the steps. One direction or one rule at a time. The fewer rules, the better. And when you are checking rules, don't ever just ask, do you understand what the rules are? And do you have any questions about the rules? Not that anybody here would ever do that in BC. Do you understand the rules? Mm-hmm. Do you have any questions? Mm-mm. But let's check for true understanding. And then when you really get a sense that they really do understand the rules and what the rules mean, and then they break them, then the discussion is not, you broke the rule, here's the consequence, that's going to help you remember the rule. You might have to give a consequence, but know that it's not going to help them remember the rule. How can I help you remember that rule when you need it? Because remember, even if it's stored in the brain, they can't recall the information when they need it. Because verbal receptive language processing is really impaired, we need to use more senses. And we need to use repeated role-playing because we need to model how we want this person to respond. And using the example of the youngster, say, who meets their new boyfriend at the bus stop, or the youngster whose friends, quote, friends who they just met, tell them, we're going to go out and we're going to, have some drinks or we're going to do this. Just say no doesn't work. We need to role play. What do we want them to say in those situations? And then we want them to role play what they saw us do. And then we want to repeat that. We want to give them the tools so that they know exactly how to respond and don't have to think about, what do I do in this situation, because that's where they get into trouble. If they need to have consequences, immediate short-term consequences connected with what happened are the best ones to make a connection between cause and effect. Long-term consequences or consequences that happen a few days or a week or two later really make no connection between what happened and the consequence for it. So immediate short-term, and when it's over, and ideally the consequence would be within the same day, because every day is a new day for them. And we don't want to use natural consequences because they're not going to learn from them. That's the whole thing. It's like with a lot of people, the consequences work. That's great. So we don't want to put the person at risk by using natural consequences because they're not going to help them be more successful. We want to beware and discuss misinterpretations of words or actions or others when they occur. What happens is, because they can't read social cues and interpret them correctly, because also the part of the brain in the frontal lobes that's responsible, for example, for processing humor is impaired. So although many people I know with FASD are very funny, they have a great sense of humor, and they absolutely cannot tell if somebody's kidding around with them or if somebody is serious. And typically, if somebody's kidding around with them, they think the person either hates them or is out to get them. And that's what they respond to, because they can't read it. And because that area of the brain is damaged, we can't teach them the nuances to figure out if somebody's joking or serious. But what we can do is teach them that because of the way their brain works, they're not sure. They need to check it out before they respond. In the same vein, they also can't tell that another student in the class is having a bad day and it has nothing to do with them. So they think it has to do with them. So we have to say, Jane's having a bad day today, it has nothing to do with you. I really believe that we should set up a chill-out space in each setting, as it says here. Now, a chill-out space is maybe a corner of a room. Every single classroom can have a chill-out space. It's a corner of a room with maybe a beanbag chair, maybe an empty box like a stove box or refrigerator box, big box, carpeted on the inside and open on one end. That's about it. Maybe there's a book in there. Maybe there's an MP3 player with some soft music and nothing else. And it is not where you go, the corner of the room where you go when you're bad. It is where you go when you need to just chill out. Again, remember the cortisol piece. We want these kids and adolescents to identify when they are beginning to get stressed or anxious and take a chill out. And then we want to use literal language. So we don't want to use metaphors or similes or idiomatic expressions. Be very careful about things like sarcasm. Be careful about joking. Now, the other thing that happens with these kids, of course, is that they model what's around them. So if they see two teachers in the hallway joking around with each other, being sarcastic with each other, they might go either with a teacher or a peer and try to do the same thing and get into trouble, because they don't understand that the teachers can do it with each other, but they can't do it. Homework is a real issue, that if they do have homework, they shouldn't be sent to their room to close the door, turn the computer off, and do their homework. Come here and sit next to me and do your homework is much better, because that physical contact helps them focus. I remember a woman once with FASD saying, what I need is a stander. I need somebody to stand next to me, that helps me focus. They need relaxation time every day. They can't, and what takes other kids an hour to do may take these kids 5 hours to do. And we don't want them to come home from school, start their homework right away, work through, break for dinner, work through homework, time to go to bed, get up the next morning, try to finish their homework, and then they don't get it finished, then they have more homework the next day. But really build in time for them to, if they can hang in there for school, that's amazing. They need relaxation. And they do better with a time in than a time out. Time in means come and sit next to me. You need a time in. The physical presence, unless they're being physically aggressive and need to be separated. Rather than go to your room or go to the corner. And never say to somebody with FASD, go to the corner and think about what you did wrong, because you're giving them multiple directions. And then we want to use person-first language. So there is no such thing as an FAS kid. There's no such thing as an FAS mom. Having been trained in a medical model in mental health, there's no such thing as a schizophrenic, a bipolar, or a depressive. There may be a person with schizophrenia, there may be a person with bipolar disorder, there may be a person with FAS. In the substance abuse field, we often talk about the substance abusing woman. There is no such thing. but there may be a woman who abuses substances. My personal bias is that there is no such thing as an alcoholic, but there is a person who has alcoholism. And that's my own personal bias. I would rather have people say what they are instead, because really, they are not, that's not who they are. That may be what they have, but not who they are. Mentors are really important. Again, goes back to, and everything that we talk about in strategies is based on our knowledge of the brain damage and the structures of the brain that are damaged by prenatal alcohol and what they do and why we need to do something different. So the idea of a one-to-one mentor, because they do much better one-to-one than in a group situation, somebody who's more pro-social, somebody who they can model, maybe setting up buddies in the classroom, but not just for this one child and not singling them out, but maybe for the whole class. Okay, we want to set the person up to succeed. So if we identify their strengths and abilities, we can also identify how they can be a mentor for others, like the one who helps the new kids in the class feel comfortable, or is the tour guide, or makes the announcements, or the artist who likes showing other people how to draw or paint, who could really teach a painting or drawing class and mentor in that way. Or the young woman who I met who did wonderful origami, Japanese paper folding, and set her up to teach Japanese paper folding to others. So there are ways that they can be a mentor to others, and also for them to have a mentor. And then we want to define what is success for this person. Success is different for all of us. It's not the same for everybody. But it's a lifelong disorder. The brain damage is brain damage. That does not mean that people with FASD can't grow and improve and change. They absolutely can. But the brain damage is brain damage. So we want to look, so we can't have just short-term immediate services and then they're over. And we really need to work with them on preparing them for adult life and talk about what do they need in order to be successful.